Welcome back, dedicated aspirants of Shishya Aday Academy. Let's jump right into today's explainer. We're zeroing in on a poetic form you absolutely must master for the UGC NET and similar competitive exams, the elegy. We've got a lot of high-yield ground to cover today, so grab those notebooks and let's get into it.
Here's our roadmap for today's session. We'll be looking at the definition and etymology, its origin and development, the different types of elegy, stanza and meter structure, some famous examples, and finally, your exam identification tips.
Starting off with our first section, definition and etymology, understanding the roots of lamentation.
Now, you definitely want to write this down. What's truly fascinating about an elegy is that it isn't just about being sad. By definition, it's a poem of serious reflection, typically written in the first person, that mourns a loss. But here's the crucial part. It fundamentally ends in consolation. It's really this deeply personal, emotional journey toward acceptance. And if we look at the etymology, it actually derives from the ancient Greek word for lament. So it starts in heavy grief, but it doesn't stay there. That thematic arc is absolutely vital for you to recognize.
Moving right along to section 2, origin and development, from ancient mistress to modern theme.
Take a look at this timeline, because this historical shift is a huge concept. Back in ancient Greece and Rome, the elegy was defined purely by its metrical pattern, specifically elegiac couplets. Believe it or not, it wasn't defined by themes of grief at all. You could literally have an upbeat love poem written in elegiac meter, which sounds completely wild to us today. But as we move forward to the 16th century in English literature, the definition shifted strictly to poems of grief and lamentation. Then we hit the 18th century and boom, it absolutely flourishes. The English Romantics really valued it for personal expression and actually reinvented the stanza itself. Finally, in the modern era, poets basically abandoned that strict meter and rhyme altogether, focusing primarily on the thematic arc of mortality and acceptance. So it essentially transformed from a strict technical requirement to a purely thematic form.
All right, section 3, types of elegy, categorizing the forms of mourning.
So we can break this down into two main categories. First up is the general elegy, which focuses on those universal subjects, death, mortality, and the deeply private experience of grief. But the second type, the pastoral elegy, listen up because this is a massive high-yield topic for your exams. You always want to keep an eye out for those rustic shepherd tropes and mythological shoutouts. This highly stylized form traces all the way back to the Roman poet Virgil. It portrays the deceased as a shepherd, invokes classical figures like the Muses, is set in this idealized natural world, and ultimately concludes by finding peace in the immaculate beauty of nature.
On to section 4, structure, stanza, and meter. Let's look at the mechanics behind the poetry.
Let's do a quick side-by-side comparison here. The ancient elegiac couplets, used by poets like Ovid, are structured as a two-line couplet. The meter alternates between dactylic hexameter, which is 6 dactyls, and dactylic pentameter, 5 dactyls. And importantly, there's absolutely no rhyme. It's all about that metrical focus. Now, contrast that with the English elegiac stanza favored by the 18th century Romantics. We're looking at a 4-line quatrain written in iambic pentameter, so 5 iambs per line, locked into a strict ABAB rhyme scheme. Huge difference there structurally.
Moving to section 5, famous elegy examples, masterpieces of lamentation.
Let's hear what this actually sounds like with these famous lines from Thomas Gray. Here rests his head upon the lap of earth, a youth to fortune and to fame unknown. Fair science frowned not on his humble birth, and melancholy marked him for her own. Gray's masterpiece here is literally your textbook example of the 18th century elegiac stanza. You can clearly hear that steady ABAB iambic pentameter rhythm. Earth rhymes with birth, unknown with own. It's incredibly formal, perfectly structured, and deeply reflective.
Next up is Milton's Lycidas, which is widely considered the absolute greatest pastoral elegy in the English language. He writes, "Weep no more, woeful shepherds, weep no more, for Lycidas, your sorrow, is not dead, sunk though he be beneath the watery floor." Right out of the gate, woeful shepherds, you instantly spot the required shepherd motif. Plus, we perfectly see that necessary thematic shift toward Christian consolation. He acknowledges the tragic drowning, sunk though he be, but deliberately pivots toward hope and eternal life.
Now fast forward to Walt Whitman mourning Abraham Lincoln, and this is a brilliant illustration of the modern elegy. "Oh, how shall I warble myself for the dead one there I loved, and how shall I deck my song for the large sweet soul that is gone? Notice what's missing here. It's completely free verse. There is no set rhyme, no steady iambic pentameter. But that immense emotional intensity, paired with that first-person exploration of grief, firmly cements this masterpiece as an elegy.
Now, for competitive exams, you really need to be ready for intertextual and politically contextualized elegies as well. Take a look at this practice question regarding Zbigniew of Herbert's Elegy of Fortinbras. Herbert uses the elegiac form to essentially continue Shakespeare's Hamlet right from where the play ends, mourning the prince. However, he sets this against the historical backdrop of Soviet-occupied Poland. Now, we are simply examining the source text here, but it's a perfect example of how a modern elegy can bridge intertextual literature with the broader socio-political realities of a poet's own era.
Finally, Section 6, Exam Identification Tips. This is your Shishya Udi Academy cheat sheet.
Please memorize this checklist. It's a real game changer. First, identify the thematic arc. Look for that movement from deep sorrow toward ultimate consolation. Second, check the perspective. Is it first person? Remember, elegies highlight private emotions. Third, spot the pastoral tropes. Scan for shepherds, rustic nature, or muses. Fourth, analyze the structure. A quatrain in iambic pentameter with an ABAB rhyme? That's an English elegiac stanza. Alternating lines of 6 and 5 dactyls? Classical antiquity, elegiac couplets. And lastly, don't get tripped up by modern poems. If it's free verse but heavily focuses on the subject of death and reflection, it's very likely a modern elegy.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a final thought to chew on for your studies. If modern poetry allows elegies to exist entirely without strict meter or rhyme, what prevents any sad poem from being classified as an elegy? Seriously, what truly separates a momentary lament from a masterful, transformative elegy? Think deeply on that as you review your notes today. Keep up the great work and happy studying.